Hi, my name is Amanda Brooks. I'm 30 years old, a first lieutenant in the United States Air Force. I've spent the last 9 years serving my country, and most recently, I completed a year-long deployment in Qatar. I've faced sandstorms, sirens, sleepless nights, and I handled them all with pride. But nothing prepared me for what happened when I came home for Independence Day. You'd think a soldier returning home from deployment, especially around July 4th, would be welcomed with open arms, right? That someone who'd worn the uniform, missed holidays, and carried the weight of duty would at least get a plate at the family barbecue. But I found out the hard way that sometimes your absence becomes more comfortable than your presence. What I thought would be a surprise reunion turned into a night. I'll never forget a night where the fireworks weren't the loudest thing breaking my heart. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, stay with me. You're not alone. I landed back in Texas on July 3rd. No one knew because I didn't tell them. I thought it'd be a heartwarming surprise. Every year, my family hosts a massive July 4th barbecue at my parents' home in Waco. Food, music, laughter. Growing up, it was the one time we all came together and I hadn't made it in years. This time I planned to show up in uniform, maybe even get a few proud tears out of Mom. Instead, when I pulled up the driveway, it was already full. Trucks, SUVs, kids running around with flags painted on their cheeks, the smell of grilled corn and ribs in the air. I felt that familiar excitement rush through me. I straightened my jacket, grabbed my overnight bag, and walked up to the door. It was locked. I rang the bell. A moment later, my sister Emily opened it holding a glass of lemonade. She blinked like I was a ghost. Amanda, what are you doing here? I gave a nervous laugh. Surprise, I'm home. She paused. No one knew. We didn't think you'd be back until winter. Behind her, I saw faces turn and glance my way. My mother appeared. She stepped outside, lowering her voice. Amanda, honey, this was meant to be just family today. Maybe come back tomorrow. I froze. I am family. She looked away. That night, I parked my car by the curb, climbed into the back seat, and pulled a blanket over my uniform. Fireworks lit up the sky above, but all I saw was the reflection of my own face in the window, wondering how it had come to this. The night air was thick with the smell of barbecue and fireworks smoke, but inside my car, everything was still. Just me, the hum of the streetlight, and the distant sound of laughter from the porch I used to call home. I wrapped my blanket tighter and leaned my head back against the seat, eyes wide open, but staring into memories. It hadn't always been this way. Growing up, I was the odd one out in a house full of polished shoes and framed diplomas. My dad was a corporate tax lawyer. My mom handled estate planning for high-end clients. My sister, Emily. She followed suit, top of her class Ivy League, now working for the governor's office like she was born for the campaign trail. Then there was me, the girl who climbed trees too high, cut her hair short before it was trendy, and signed up for ROTC when everyone else was prepping for business school. I didn't belong in their dinner conversations about mergers and municipal bonds. I talked about boot camp blisters and learning how to shoot with sand in my eyes, and they never quite knew what to do with that. At family dinners, I was the punchline. Here comes G.I. Jane. Uncle Robert would chuckle, poking fun at my haircut. Any new medals, or are they just handing those out now? Emily would ask, sipping wine with that diplomatic smirk. And whenever I tried to share about a rescue mission gone right or a pilot I trained, making it to special ops, the room would fall quiet, then pivot back to stock markets and suburban real estate. I wasn't just different. I was invisible in plain sight. They never said it out loud, but I felt it every time I didn't belong. Not in their world of polished appearances and political handshakes. I had calluses, grit stories they didn't want to hear. And now, on the very day this country celebrates freedom, liberty for all, I sat outside my own parents' home uninvited, watching fireworks bloom in the sky like flowers I wasn't allowed to pick. From inside the house, a burst of laughter carried through the wind. I knew that laugh, my mother's. Soft, carefree. I pressed my hand to the window and whispered, Happy Independence Day. But this time it wasn't for them. It was for me. The morning after Independence Day was gray and quiet, as if the sky itself was tired from all the celebration. I hadn't slept much. The back seat of a Toyota Camry isn't exactly designed for reflection, but that night it had become a confessional. And I had nothing left to confess except that I was tired of trying to earn love that should have come freely. I found a rundown gas station just off the highway. The fluorescent lights flickered as I washed up in the narrow bathroom, scrubbing the remnants of barbecue smoke and pride off my face. My reflection stared back, uniform wrinkled hair pulled into a tight bun, eyes hollow. I didn't look like a hero. I looked like a question no one wanted to answer. By 7:00 a.m., I was at the military cemetery just outside of Waco. It had been 3 years since we buried Sergeant Marcus Hill. He'd taken a bullet meant for me in Kandahar. I never forgot the way he smiled through the pain, whispering, "Tell my mom I kept my promise." I stood by his grave, letting the silence speak for both of us. The wind moved gently through the flags planted in the ground. That's when I noticed the older man kneeling 2 rows over his back, straight, his hands shaking slightly as he adjusted the flowers on a headstone. He noticed me. "You serving, miss?" I nodded. "Air Force." He stood, brushed the dust from his jeans, and extended a hand. "Howard. Army 68 to 72. Lost a few brothers here." We talked for a few minutes about heat rations, about the way civilians clap for you at airports, but forget you the minute you're gone. Then he looked me in the eye and said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes, kid, you gotta build your own family. Blood don't always mean bond." That line stuck with me all day. Back in the car, I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor. I pulled up my military resume, updated my deployments, added my citations. Then I opened the application form for a stateside command position. No more waiting to be invited, no more shrinking to fit inside other people's expectations. That night, I hit submit, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged to myself. Freedom doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it comes quietly, like signing a lease and turning the key to a front door no one else holds. 2 days after Independence Day, I found a little one-story brick home on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a creaky porch, and a backyard big enough for 1 folding chair and a grill. But it was mine. No more guest rooms. No more asking to be let in. The first thing I did was plant a small flag in the yard right beneath the porch light. Then I added a sign in hand-carved wood, "Home of a U.S. officer, not forgotten." It wasn't for them, it was for me. Later that night, I sat on the floor back against a cardboard box and opened my phone. I stared at the blank post window for a long time before typing. This Independence Day. I stood on the outside of my own family's celebration. I wore my uniform. I knocked. They closed the door. I don't share this to shame them, but because I know I'm not the only one. Sometimes the ones who sacrifice the most are remembered the least. But today, I choose freedom not from my country, but from needing permission to exist. If you've ever felt unseen, you're not alone. You are not forgotten. I posted it without overthinking, set the phone down, and fell asleep with the windows open to the sound of cicadas. By morning, everything had changed. Hundreds of messages flooded in comments from other vets, single mothers, young enlistees, and even strangers saying, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." One message stood out. "Amanda, we're a group of female veterans meeting July 5th in Austin for coffee and conversation. You belong with us. Join us." I drove down that afternoon. We sat in folding chairs in the back room of a diner, 6 women, 6 uniforms, 6 different wars. And for the first time, I wasn't asked what I'd done to deserve my seat. They just made space for me, and in that space I realized something powerful. Respect isn't earned through medals, it's earned through truth. I didn't expect silence after the post went viral, but I also didn't expect the first wave of backlash to come from the people who once called themselves my family. It started with Emily. She didn't text or call, she published a carefully worded post on her own page. No names, of course. Just icy precision crafted like a press release. It's disheartening when some choose to exploit a national holiday to portray themselves as victims. Independence Day should be about unity, not personal grudges. Let's not twist family misunderstandings into public spectacle. The comments were predictable. "Well," said classy response, "and some people will do anything for attention." Then came the call from Mom. Her voice was sharp the way it got when I used to track mud into the kitchen as a kid. "Amanda, what were you thinking? That post is everywhere. People from church are asking questions. Your uncle saw it on Facebook and called your father in a panic." I stayed quiet. She pressed on. "You've embarrassed us. It was a misunderstanding, that's all. You blew it out of proportion. You need to take it down. I took a breath and said the one thing I'd been holding back for years. Mom, you locked me out. You made a choice. So did I. You shut your door, and now I've opened mine. There was silence. Then the line went dead. It hurt. Of course it did. These were the people I had saluted from halfway across the world, the ones I used to dream of hugging after every mission. But somewhere along the way, they decided their version of family didn't include women in boots and battle fatigues. So I chose to make my own meaning out of the pain. I started small, answering direct messages from young female soldiers who had read my post. Some were struggling with family rejection. Others felt unseen in their units. I didn't have all the answers, but I had ears. I had time. Before long, we started meeting once a week online, talking, listening, sharing strategies for self-worth. They called me Lieutenant Amanda even outside of rank. That title meant more than any I'd worn in uniform, because now I wasn't just fighting to be seen. I was helping others be seen too. One week after the fireworks faded, I stood under the bright morning sun in front of the Waco Veterans Memorial. Rows of folding chairs filled the town square, flags rippling behind the podium. I had been asked to attend. What I didn't know was that I'd be the one standing at center stage. It was the annual Military Appreciation Ceremony, a tradition that usually honored retired colonels and lifelong service members. I thought I'd be clapping in the crowd. But instead, as the national anthem ended, the announcer called my name, First Lieutenant Amanda Brooks, U.S. Air Force, for distinguished service abroad and unwavering commitment to fellow servicewomen at home. The crowd applauded as I stepped up. The mayor, a kind-eyed man in a tan blazer, shook my hand and pinned a silver medallion onto my uniform. Lieutenant, he said, this city sees you, and we thank you. I took the mic, heart pounding louder than any siren I'd heard overseas. I looked out at the sea of faces, strangers, neighbors, and somewhere in the back row, a familiar silhouette I couldn't yet name. I cleared my throat. People often say July 4th is about fireworks, cookouts, and red, white, and blue. But for me, this year, it was about something deeper. Independence Day is about choosing integrity, choosing what's right even when you stand alone. Because sometimes the hardest battlefield isn't overseas, it's right at your own doorstep. The square went quiet. I let that silence hold for a moment. Honor isn't just about medals or missions. It's about holding on to your truth when it would be easier to stay quiet. Applause erupted, not polite, but thunderous. I smiled for the first time in weeks, and it wasn't forced. What I didn't know then was that a local TV station had captured the whole thing. That night, they aired the clip with the headline, Air Force Officer Speaks Out on What Freedom Really Means. The video spread like wildfire. Messages poured in from people across the country, veterans, teachers, even single dads saying, "Thank you for speaking what we've all felt." But the most unexpected came from my inbox, a short message from Emily. I saw the speech. I didn't get it before. Maybe I'm starting to. Maybe she was. Maybe others were too, because finally they were hearing me. It was a quiet Sunday morning. The air was still and the sound of sprinklers ticked softly across the neighbor's lawn. I was sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, sorting through logistics for the upcoming Veterans for Freedom event. Our first in-person gathering, when I saw a familiar silver sedan pull into my driveway. Emily. She stepped out slowly, dressed casual for once, no heels, no tailored jacket, just jeans and a cardigan. In her hands was a worn photo album, the spine fraying at the edges. "I didn't call," she said, almost sheepishly. I nodded. "That's fine." She walked up the steps holding out the album like an olive branch. "I found these," she said, flipping it open. "Remember this one? You had missing front teeth and insisted on saluting every guest at Grandma's birthday." I smiled despite myself. She gave me a standing ovation. Emily sat beside me on the porch swing. There was a long pause filled with all the years we'd spent pretending to be close but never truly knowing each other. "I don't agree with everything you've said or done, Amanda," she admitted. "But I was wrong. We were wrong. That day, we should have opened the door." I looked at her, my voice steady. I don't need you to understand every part of me. I just need you to respect that I'm no less part of this family than anyone else. Emily nodded, eyes glistening. You deserve that. You always did. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom. I watched your speech. I'm sorry. I let pride get in the way of love. Can we talk soon? It wasn't everything, but it was something. A few days later, I sent out invitations to my upcoming event. Veterans for Freedom had grown into a statewide network, and we were hosting our first community rally. I added 2 more names to the guest list, Emily and Mom. This time, no surprise visits. No doors left unanswered. I didn't know if they'd show up. But I sent the invitation anyway, not to seek validation, but to offer one last bridge. Because forgiveness, like freedom, is something you offer with an open hand, not a clenched fist. July 4th came again, but this year I didn't drive toward my parents' house. There was no packed car, no uniform folded in the passenger seat, no shaky breath at the curb hoping to be let in. This time I was exactly where I was meant to be, not on the sidelines of someone else's gathering, but standing in the spotlight of my own purpose. The city of Austin had asked me to speak at the Independence Day community celebration. I was representing not just the Air Force, but all female service members, past and present, who had fought battles both on the field and within their own families. We gathered at the amphitheater downtown, where 1,000 folding chairs dotted the lawn and the Texas flag swayed beside the stars and stripes. As I stepped onto the stage, my heart pounded not from nerves, but from pride. I unfolded a single sheet of paper. It was the letter I'd written to myself exactly 1 year ago, the night I slept in my car outside the barbecue. I read slowly, letting each word land. To the woman outside the door, you are not broken. You are not forgotten. You are not a mistake. You are just too strong for the wrong people to understand. Stand up. Speak out. Your place is not at the curb. It's at the center. I paused, looked up at the crowd, and delivered the closing line with the strength it had taken me a lifetime to find. You were never forgotten. You were just too strong for the wrong people. The applause started softly. Then it swelled dozens, then hundreds, rising to their feet, hands clapping, flags waving. And just then, fireworks exploded above the stage, lighting up the sky in gold, blue, and red. But I wasn't watching from behind a windshield this time. I wasn't hiding behind glass, afraid of who I was or where I belonged. I stood tall, center stage, bathed in light and surrounded by people who saw me, truly saw me. The echo of celebration filled the air, and for the first time on this day, I didn't need to search for independence. I was living it. Thank you so much for staying with Amanda's story until the very end. If her journey touched something in your heart, whether it reminded you of a time you felt unseen or inspired you to reclaim your own voice, we're truly honored to have shared this moment with you. Stories like Amanda's aren't just about one person. They echo the quiet strength of so many who've stood in silence waiting to be heard. If you have ever felt left out, overlooked, or had to choose your own kind of freedom, we invite you to share your story in the comments. This community listens, you are not alone. And if Amanda's story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Every click helps us bring more powerful voices to light stories that deserve to be heard, remembered, and honored. Together, let's make sure no one has to fight for recognition alone. Thank you. And remember, your story matters.